Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Passion Project, a weekly podcast brought to you by the WHS Tech Crew. I'm one of your hosts, Derek, and I'm joined by Guru.
Hello.
This is a weekly podcast where we bring in a guest so they can talk about a topic they're particularly passionate about. It can be literally anything. Ribbon collecting, Christmas tree decorating, candy canes, oil paintings of Santa Claus. This week, our guest is Mr. Mahoney.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
And Mr. Mahoney, so what have you come to us to talk to us about?
Well, I was asked to talk about a few of my passions in life. And so first and foremost, it's being a principal, being an educator, and we could talk about that for a long time if you'd like. Then we could talk about anything else, things like health and wellness, just mental happiness in general, and how we can control that. Those are the things that I'm particularly focused on in my life.
And I guess I'll start with being the principal. You're for like me and Derek, since we're seniors, you're our fourth principal in 4 years.
Sure.
And I guess the first thing, so how did you sort of get into like the educational field and stuff?
That actually, that's a great segue, Guru. It leads into the topic of passion. So a lot of kids grow up in Massachusetts and Eastern Massachusetts and have similar interests, similar experiences, and so it's hard to break away from the pack and think about what you like and what you are all about, and think about yourself as a human being and what you want to be, and if you want to do anything different than what's in front of you. So most kids, in let's say the Middlesex League, because that's where I grew up in Burlington, that's what I'm familiar with, Winchester and what have you. You get up, you go to school, you do your work, you go play your sport, or you have your extracurricular activity, and you do all these things because you're supposed to do them. You're not really necessarily passionate about some of these things, but you do them because you're supposed to, and that's the passage for most kids. I went to college because you're supposed to go to college. I didn't really think about taking a gap year or not going at all. It's just something I wasn't thinking for myself. I had a science background. I've always been, interested in somewhat passionate, I guess you'd say, in science. And so I went to college and studied science, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that, but I definitely knew things that I liked in life. It took me until I was about 22, though, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm 40 now. It took me until I was 22 to actually be asked a question by somebody who was very different than I was. So my college roommate's stepmother is an artist, an accomplished artist, and I was a science person, so our brains definitely function very differently. And she asked me a question. We were just talking about the future, and we were at their vacation home, and she asked me what I was passionate about. And I had never thought of the question. I always just done things because you're supposed to do them, and did things because I liked them for sure, but never thought about, wow, do I really care about what I'm doing? Am I really passionate about anything that I'm doing? And that really lit a fire. It really blew my mind. It was one question asked in my life that changed the course of my life. So it made me start to think about, what do I really love to do? Because I like to do a lot of things, but there's a big difference between like and love. When you like to do things, you can do a number of things all the time and enjoy them. But when you love to do something, you can't live without it. You can't even think about living without it. So it got me to think about, well, there's a lot of things that I like to do, but what do I love to do? And I figured, I definitely loved high school. I loved going to school. It certainly had bad days just like everybody else, and bad years sometimes. But I really enjoyed the process, and enjoyed, seeing my friends, and enjoyed learning. And when I was in college, I did a lot of TAing. I was a teacher's assistant. I did a lot of tutoring, and I really enjoyed that too. And I figured out, I really like working with people. I really like working in education. How am I going to turn that into something that I'm passionate about? So, I came from a background of people in education, and, asking them questions and figuring out what I want to do and where would I be in life. I gave teaching a try, and that was it. That was, first month of school. That was it. I knew this is what I was passionate about. And it was through exploration. It was from trying a bunch of different things. So I didn't really know that I was passionate about it until I did it. I knew I thought I'd like it, but moving from the difference between liking something and being passionate about it was a significant moment in my life. And it started with that question of, what are you passionate about? Because most people, not just talking teenagers, most people never think about that. They do things because they like to do things and because you're supposed to do these things. But do you really love doing it? Can you imagine yourself without doing it? And I can't possibly imagine myself doing anything other than working with teenagers. It sounds corny, and you might tell me to dream bigger, but I am living the dream, because once I started teaching, I realized all these other opportunities and all these things that are out there in education and what I could do in terms of my own skill set and you know, how I can work with teenagers, and I'm really living the realized goal that I set 15 years ago. So it's you know, it's easy to say you're passionate about it when you can't think about doing anything else because you love what you do. And I genuinely, most people say I have to go to work in the morning, and I never say that. I'm going to school. I got school tomorrow, and it's not it's not a like a pejorative statement. It's a statement of that's what I do because that's who I am, and I love it.
And do you think a lot of kids these days, at least where we are right now with like sort of more knowledge of like the internet and like increased pressures, they feel kids in high school feel forced to know what they want to do?
I don't know if they feel forced. I think they feel the pressure to pick something, and I hope that they don't. I know that pressures come from all different places, but you shouldn't feel any pressure because you have the rest of your life to figure it out. You know, at high school, when you're in college, if you don't have any children of your own, and you know, I'm pretty aware that most of the kids at Winchester don't have any children of their own, you are only dependent upon yourself. It's a very unique time in your life where you're really only responsible for you. And it's a great feeling to have that freedom to be able to explore and to do anything you want to do and not to be in a rush. You know, my father would say, you know, what are you in a rush to work for the rest of your life for? You know, everybody's going to work because the cost of living is so expensive that people are going to work for the rest of their lives. Why are you in a rush to get started? And it was pretty good. It was pretty good advice.
And I was wondering where else have you taught before you came to Winchester?
I started my career in Arlington and spent some time there teaching and coaching, and I loved coaching, but I realized I couldn't go further in the ranks of administration and have a family and coach at the same time. So I lost the coaching aspect, which I still do miss. I coached hockey and lacrosse there. Then I went to Concord Middle School to try that for a few years because I'd never taught in middle school. I knew high school is what I liked to do, but I didn't know if I loved it yet. So I wanted to see, you know, is it education that I love or is it high school education that I love? I tried the middle school in Concord for a couple of years, and it definitely takes a very unique, special person to teach middle school. I was not that person. I think I did a nice job, but it definitely, and it made me a more compassionate person, understanding freshmen when they come up to the high school a little bit better, but it wasn't for me for a career. After that, I got an opportunity to be a department head for science in Littleton, and I was there for a number of years, and that was a great experience. It's a small town. Again, it made me, working in a small town rather than in the Middlesex League or the area that I grew up in, made me a much better educator, and I think a more well-rounded person too because of different experiences that I was able to get. And then after that, I was an assistant principal in Wilmington for 6 years. So I came kind of back to the communities that I know.
And could you maybe explain the process of how you sort of like went from just sort of science and then specifically into teaching on the educational field? Because I always hear, I have a lot of friends who like say they want to be teachers, but I guess I had a personal confusion about like what's sort of like the exact pathway to like becoming one.
Sure. So there's no very specific pathway. I think when we hire, we like to see people first and foremost. I want to hear that you love kids. Don't tell me that you love biology. Tell me that you love kids and that you're really good at biology, and the rest will take care of itself. But there's a couple different pathways. You can go to school and get an education degree. You can go. A lot of programs will give you a 5th year, and you'll get not only your undergraduate, you'll get your graduate degree, your master's, and a professional license, which is nice. It's a really good way to get right into the field and get a lot of bases covered that other people like myself would have to go to night school and take their time figuring it out. The second way is you have to pass a teaching certification test. If you pass those 2 tests, you can apply anywhere you want. And so you might have a undergraduate degree in business, but you have a particular interest in English, and you're a great writer and you want to teach English. So you can go into education that way as well.
And then like as a scientist, do you have to like complete any specific exams? I know like Mr. Trackmus, when he had to become like a math teacher, he had to take like this long like just a math exam, and
Sure.
then he was like complaining to us just because like he only missed one question on the test. But like, yeah.
So I've taken a few of those tests because I wanted to be as well-rounded as I could. You have to take a literacy test, and it's surprisingly frustrating because there's a lot that you just don't use after you learn how to use it in terms of grammar and syntax, and that was frustrating. But I passed it, so I'm literate, and I'm proud of that. But then I took a biology test to teach biology 9 through 12, and that was a great, I passed that test. And when I went to the middle school level, there's what's called a general science test, which is basically 6 through 9 of just general science. So it's like biology, but it'll be earth science and astronomy. And that was like 12 or 13 years ago. I still remember a question that I got wrong because I just had no idea, and I've never gotten it. And now I explored it on my own because I wanted to know more about it. It was about a succession forest, and there was about the Kuiper asteroid belt over by Mars. For some reason, I was like, "There's no asteroid belt by Mars. That's in Star Wars. That's ridiculous. We don't have anything that close." But I was 100% wrong. So I still remember that stuff from over a decade ago, and be that as it may, I passed that test, and I also have my MBA from Suffolk University. So at some point, somebody wanted me to teach an accounting class and get my business test out of the way as well. So I took that test, and I think those are it. I'd have to go back into my own resume and think about it. But the tests they can be frustrating. They do test you, but you'd want people that are highly qualified. So I do believe in them.
Yeah. I was wondering if would you have ever considered teaching in like a college level?
No, I've never given it much thought. I mean, when I was a TA, I enjoyed it, but I was also in my early 20s. I'm exactly where I want to be. I'm doing what I love to do. So right now, I couldn't even possibly think about it.
Yeah, and so why did you want to come to Winchester so badly?
It's the reputation. It's the opportunity to be a principal, to realize the goal. The reputation of the school, which has lived up to the reputation. I mean, everyone said, "Oh, the kids are great," but the kids are really great. Sometimes I sit in like one of the shows in the auditorium or a sporting event, and Mr. Chapman and Mr. Konis will be there, and we were at the chorus event the other night. I just had to lean over and go, "We work at a really good school. I mean, these kids are amazing," and it's not like that at every school. I mean, there's a lot of talent in a lot of places, but we do seem to be very concentrated here. Case in point, your directing debut. That's an amazing project that you did as a junior, and it helped you reach your own passion. And NYU is a great accomplishment. So if that's not announced yet, you can edit that out. But that's rare to find the amount. It's rare to find kids doing what kids do in Winchester at the amount that they do it in.
And what do you love so much about what do you think Winchester High School, like in your opinion, because I know this is like as your first year here, like what does it offer so much to like I guess the students and also to like the teachers?
Might have to phrase that a little differently.
I just mean like what great opportunities do you think that it just provides to like its students and its teachers?
I think for not to be hyperbolic, but I think we offer a world-class high school education. I think the amount of good classes that we offer and the choices compared to what's out there, if you look at the rest of the country, that Massachusetts is always ranked number 1 in terms of education. Well, we're ranked in the top 1% of that number 1 ranking. And so if you look at the rest of the world, if you get out and you travel and you realize what kids don't have access to, what only the super wealthy students in Asia have access to, or in India, we're offering a world-class education that's free. And I mean that. I mean, like, if you really do explore the rest of the world, you're like, Winchester's amazing.
And would you, actually, I'll ask that question later. I was, Derek, dear.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Like, it's free because it's a public school, and I definitely agree that it really is a world-class education. But couldn't you also argue that it still is only available to the very wealthy citizens of Massachusetts, considering the cost of living in Winchester?
I think you could present that argument. I would tell you that we have more kids than you'd realize that would not be considered wealthy. So it's the barrier to entry is to live in the town. But there are plenty of places in the town that you can live that you don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to own the biggest house in the street or a house at all. I mean, there's plenty of apartments and students that we have that are going on to great things because of what they were exposed to in Winchester. Yes, if you take even just like Eastern Massachusetts off the board, I think money is a driving factor that allows us to have this education compared to other parts of the country. But we're using it wisely, and it's definitely. I don't want to name another town and offend anybody, but compared to another like a city or something, yes, the barrier to entry is living here for sure.
I think it's interesting how a lot of people at least with my parents, I don't know how long your parents have been living in Winchester, Derek, but like for mine, they specifically moved to Winchester just to send me to Morocco Elementary School, which they saw it was like listed as a really great school, and then like they were willing to like either buy a house on like it's like on the border between Lexington and Winchester,
Mm-hmm.
or like in the heart of Winchester, like a few minutes away from Morocco, and the only reason they chose that other place was to send me to school here. So I think it's really interesting to think about like the reputation that this town has sort of built up, but it's also like interesting like with that town, with the reputation that this town has built up, there's also so many more pressures that come with it.
Yep.
I think, I mean, especially like I'm just wondering like for you to like just come into this place that has such a high reputation of being like it's a blue ribbon school, and so like did you have any like sort of I guess like fears or like just maybe some nervousness like coming into taking hold of this?
Oh, for sure. And I don't know if I show it all the time, but there's always a level of nerves of, can I do this? This is new to me. You know, do I fit in here? Do the kids understand me? Do the parents get what I'm trying to do? Am I trying to do too much? Why would I change something that's operating so well? Am I not changing things enough? There's questions every day. I think you touched on something about the reputation of people moving into town, and that's something that I've heard quite a bit. Well, we moved into town for the schools. People are taking quite a risk to do that. It's a reputation, and you don't know whether other kids are more well suited for the environment than your own child. It's an interesting risk that I've thought of now that I hear more and more. Well, we moved into town for the schools. If you never experienced the schools, how do you know your student is going to function well and be happy in these schools? But it also goes back to speaking to all the good work that we do, because for the most part, students are all doing very well, and they are all pretty happy. So they find a way to make their own happiness in the environment that we are providing, which means that there are outlets for happiness for just about everybody. We're always on the lookout to help, if somebody isn't happy, but to move into a town on the reputation of the school and then to fulfill that reputation is something to be proud of.
And did it anything ever like the thought of just like the fact that we've been changing principles a lot recently, did that ever like how did you sort of process that? And, like,
it's always on my mind. It's something that I'm always mindful of. It's a risk. It's a calculated risk that I took. I took a risk having confidence in myself. That confidence can sometimes be shaken. It sometimes worries me, but I'm also doing what I love to do. So when I think about the risk of 4 principals in 4 years and I could get terminated, I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing. So it's been worth it. I mean, I don't want to plan for the worst, and hope for the best. I want to just keep doing what I'm doing and going with my instincts and see what happens.
I'm wondering, did they ask you about that, like when they were like interview and everything, or?
It was well known. It's pretty, before you apply to any place, you should always do your homework, do your research, and figure out the town you're going into, the climate, that's my opinion. I did a lot of homework before I even sent the application in. So I was thinking about a calculated risk, but I was also thinking that I wouldn't get the job. This has been a nice surprise. So far so good. What do you guys think?
I mean, now I'm liking your.
I mean, I feel not that it's a good thing to not know who your principal is, but the fact that we haven't heard anything bad about you or had problems because of you being principal is a good sign.
Thank you. Go ahead, Guru.
I mean, I thought you were like at least compared to Miss Kelly, I thought like Principal Kelly did like a good job and everything, but like I feel like what you've been doing, you're like a bit more, I guess, more active like with the students and stuff. Like I like the fact that like you're always like sort of there like during lunch or like in the morning, something just like greeting people and everything.
Yeah.
So
You're doing things. You're not just maintaining.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, to Miss Kelly's credit, she set me up for success. She and I worked a lot last spring and quite a bit over the summer, because her job was to keep the ship afloat in a hard time, and she did her job and did it well. So my job is to move the ship forward, and she has been a big reason for any success that I've had. Just to kind of give me the lay of the land and make sure they don't step in any landmines or make any mistakes. And that's going to happen anyway, because I'm a human being and we're prone to do those things. But I do have a feeling sometimes that the community and the parents understand me a little bit more than the kids. No matter how much I try and reach out and be involved, I'll be in the play, I'll be in the school assembly and this and that, and I'm still like, geez, I don't know if I'm connecting as well as well as I want. I want to connect. I want to be a part of your lives. I mean, go to the events and the programs, but at the same time, I know that you guys might keep me at arm's length for a number of reasons, not the least of which is you've had 4 principals in 4 years. Why would you spend the time to get to know me? I'm already thinking about my graduation speech. I have it half written because it's, I have to say, like, I didn't get to know you guys as well as I really wanted to. I mean, Guru, you and I talk almost on a daily basis about movies and pop culture, but for the most part, I don't have that relationship with the majority of the senior class, and it's nobody's fault. It's just circumstances. It's not for lack of trying, and it's not like the kids are pushing me away and rejecting me. They're welcoming me, but at arm's length, which is natural.
I think like at least with the seniors and stuff, I think a bunch of them are just kind of like spurned at this point.
Sure.
I think mainly just construction, just because we leave and then it's over. The construction's like done finally. Even though, like, in my opinion, some of the seniors, sort of their complaints are just kind of like unwarranted. Because like a lot of them are like complaining about like the parking situation or like stuff like we still have to like, walk to the mods and stuff, and like saying it's our senior year, which I personally don't get that sort of complaint because it's not like you own the school or anything. But
well, everybody is entitled to their opinion, and believe me, if I could wave a magic wand and fix it, it'd be done. But I think, to the credit of this senior class, you guys we talk about resiliency, we talk about problem solving. Nobody is set up better for success than you guys in terms of being able to deal with mini crises all the time and deal with, like heat not working like it should, and just persevering and moving on. If I don't want to use the word, tough, but mental toughness, mental strength to just deal and get through. Nobody will be better suited for the world outside of the building than you guys. And that's not lip service. That's I like to say that's a mathematical fact. You've had 4 principals in 4 years. You've had nothing but construction. You've never had parking, which is a bit of a modern world problem, but it's again, if I could fix it, that would be the easiest thing to fix. But you guys have been able to deal deal successfully. So it's a credit to you guys. And if you are a glasses half full person, you'll say like, yeah, I guess, us doing without will make us better in the long run. Mm-hmm. But it does stink in the process.
Yeah. And then I was wondering about if you could maybe talk about a lot of like the programs you're sort of bringing to the high school. Because I mean, speaking of like mental toughness and sort of like resilience, you're like we had the assembly at the beginning of the year, and a lot of the things you talk about are about like mindfulness and like just mental health. So
we're trying a bunch of different things, and trying things takes time. So the programs that I brought in were the meditation and the yoga and the CrossFit style classes. We're gonna move after the new year. This is breaking news. We're gonna move the meditation and yoga to after school. They were well received at first, but then there's the grind and getting up in the dark and everything. We just couldn't maintain it. So now we're gonna try and transition those to after school. Now we have to find space though, because there's not a lot of space after school. But the CrossFit style classes they've been well attended for what it is right now. I want to see everything grow. Ideally, in a few years from now, it doesn't benefit you guys, but in a few years from now, I'd like to have that all be done during the school day. I don't want you guys to need to go anywhere or extend your day at all and still receive these benefits, because if we're preparing kids for the choice or to be successful at college, then in college you're able to work out in the middle of the day. You're able to go to lunch in a wider range of a window rather than just a half hour set every single day. You'd only still get that half hour, but you might be able to go at a more functional time for your body. So those are the programs that we started, and there'll be a lot of changes along the way, and they're all focused on mental happiness, comfort level, relieving stress. There's a million different ways we can call it, but really it's just about you being happy and wanting to be at Winchester High School. We realize when you're seniors, like you can't wait to get out, but we'd love to give you guys reasons to want to be here every day. In talking about 9 through 12, but we know the burnout factor when you're seniors as well. I mean, if I could pick one thing that made you want to go to school every single day, come for the yoga and stay for the math class. It give you a reason to be here and enjoy it. Then all my goals would be successful.
How would you want to like incorporate it into like a natural school day? Like would it be like a block?
Yeah, it would be a block. I'd work with the state to figure out our 990 and whether we could put it in or not. And I'm fairly confident we can put it in. But that's a big change. That would change the whole structure of the schedule, and that takes all stakeholders involved. That takes the teachers understanding and getting professional development. That takes the kids saying, "Well, we're gonna maybe give up this to get that," and the community also understanding that what the benefits would be if we changed our schedule structure up. That's a long-term goal, and maybe we would look at the goal and explore it and figure out, what, our schedule is just fine as it is. We have the best schedule we can have for Winchester High School.
I know this is backtracking a bit, but you talked about how you've worked at other schools. How would you say the general attitude of students towards school is different in Winchester, as opposed to the other towns?
That is a great question. I don't think it's vastly different. I think we are more intense in Winchester, a little bit more competitive, but only by quantity. We say there's 275 kids in your class. At other schools, you might have 75 kids that have that intensity factor, and a number of other kids that are working hard and happy to go there, happy to be in school. But I'd say in Winchester, instead of that 75 are intense, you probably have 125 that are intense, and sometimes and it's different for everybody whether that's a healthy intensity or not. We'll only know throughout the course of high school. So I'd say they're very similar, just a little bit more here, just a little bit more.
Would you say that like the kids in Winchester, taking my documentary sort of away from this context, are they just from what you experienced, sort of overachieving, but sort of at a risk to their health, or is it okay that they're sort of I guess I'd say over competitive in this sense?
So the word overachieving means that they're doing more than they can, and it's hard to define. I don't know the students as well as I'd want to know if somebody's actually overachieving or burning themselves out or what their capacity is. We definitely have kids that are burning themselves out. We definitely have kids that are doing school, for lack of a better term, because that's what you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to work as hard as you possibly can, and probably aren't enjoying the world around them as much as they could. But I don't think we have that competitive side. Some of it's healthy. I don't think we need to reject it all. I think a little bit of a competitive edge, or at least competition within yourself. So, who as a principal, as an adult, who am I competing against in life? Nobody but myself. I'm competing. I'm setting my own bar, my own goals. If kids weren't so focused on what other kids were doing or getting into what schools they're getting into, and they're focused on themselves and improving themselves every day, and not worried about everybody else, I think we would still have that competitive edge, but a lot less stressful. A lot less stressful.
I was kind of asking a bunch of my friends this question too, and do you think it's to go back to your question about sort of passion, if a person's extremely passionate about something but they're burning themselves out
Right.
over it, is that still...
That's unhealthy,
Yeah.
because then you can lose your passion. You can absolutely wake up one day and be like, I don't want to do this anymore, or why am I doing this? You forgot what you love to do, and that's unhealthy. You gotta explore different things. So say you are an artist. It does pay for you to explore different mediums of art rather than what you're really passionate about. So if canvas and oil canvas is your thing, it pays for you to stretch your mind in a different way, because you'll probably become a better artist. So I do think that, sometimes we find things that we love to do and you dive into them, and that's great, that's healthy, but you should also, recognize that there's other things in life. It
And
just
then-
makes you better, makes you better at whatever you're passionate about, and gives you a break. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. So if you take a break from it, you're still, ideally you're still going to love it.
What do you do, I guess, sort of take a break from sort of teaching and
That's
being a principal?
so this is where I say do as I say, not as I do. I'm a bit of a hypocrite. Working, so I have my family, and that obviously my sons are 9 years old, and they can easily take me out of school mode because they're great. I mean, I'm a ridiculously proud father, and they're great. They're happy. They're good boys. They say ridiculous, funny things that are unintentional, and that'll take me immediately away from school mode in my brain. But I have, since I started this job, I have always been on. I'm struggling to put the screen down and to turn the laptop off. Not when I'm with my sons, like that's when I'm with my family, that's fully invested time. But if there's a down moment or there's a commercial in the show or something, I'm always like reaching for my phone, and that's a bad habit. So the way I relieve my own stress is just through exercise, whether it's yoga or working out or setting a goal. So like there'll be a race. There's a race in the snow in Western New York, and that's like it's a Spartan race, but it's a new type of race, and that's in March. So starting in January, I'll have a reason to sort of train and focus on something else that's not school related. I'm passionate about these races, but I could probably not do them as well and not lose any sleep over it. I would lose sleep if I wasn't a principal. It'd really bother me if I wasn't doing what I'm doing right now. So that's one way that I sort of relieve stress in terms of like my own self, what I would do. I'd set a goal and do something that has nothing to do with school and be able to build towards that. But I mean, having a family really takes me away from the screen and off my phone more than anything. So my sons are, they say ridiculous things, and I love it. Their Christmas list consisted of nothing but Nerf guns and video games. So first of all, they don't have a video game system in their house, and they're not getting one. And second of all, we're not going to allow Nerf guns, although we might relax the rule this year, just as what my family believes in, and that's all that their list consisted of. And I look at them, I say, well, Santa's not going to bring you these things because he knows that Mommy and I don't believe in having Nerf guns in the house, because we don't want to promote anything that might be violent. And video games, I know you want to be in that Super Smash Brothers tournament with the high school seniors, and they keep asking about that, by the way. But we don't have a video game system. Why would you want video games? They look at me, they go, "We're going for the gold, Baba." Like, what did we know? It's like that just cracks me up. So they call me Baba, but they're like, "We're going for the gold." So that can take you immediately out of whatever bad thing is happening in school or whatever mini crisis is going on. It takes me away from it.
This is such a weird, there's no segue for this, but what is your opinion in general of the United States public school system, the age it starts at, the times it usually runs, things like that? That's a big question. The United States is a big place. It's a big place, and I think we get a lot of things right. And my only focus, like I tell people, if they're going off about the middle school this or Morocco that, I'm like, all I care about is Winchester High School. I keep my scope nice and small. I care 9 through 12. If it affects the high school, I want to know about it. Other than that, we're just focused on what we can control. So my opinion is we get a lot of things right, and we get a lot of things that's not right. Because it varies so greatly state to state, so greatly. I think in the world, have you guys taken your statistics class yet? You've taken statistics?
No.
Okay, well, they're always saying where the United States ranks in terms of education. But those are statistics, and statistics can be used, those numbers can always be used for, to manipulate your argument. And I really do think, we talk about Finland, and we talk about Korea, and we talk about all these other countries that are allegedly getting it right. I'm pretty sure our statistics are a little bit more accurate than theirs, and I could be wrong, but I think we're doing a fantastic job. In an almost unwinnable environment. If you think about public education, how many different kids there are, how many different styles of learning there are, how many different types of teachers there are, how many different parents there are, it's an almost impossible environment, and we do a pretty amazing job with what we have.
What are your thoughts, though, on like that argument that always comes up about how high school is like outdated? A lot of people bring that up, especially because of the ways you were saying, like Finland's, how Finland's sort of their education is radically different from ours, but that's always regarded as like the best one, or like just like modern, I guess.
Right.
So then like American high schools sort of rely a lot on like standardization and like those types of tests and everything.
So that's where we get a lot of things wrong. You heard this story of Rip Van Winkle, right? All right. Where Rip Van Winkle falls asleep. And he sleeps for 100 years. And if he woke up today, if you took him to the Burlington Mall. He'd have no idea what that is. If you took him to a car dealership, he'd have no idea what that is. A movie theater, a TV, no idea. If you took him to a school, and you showed him a classroom, he'd know exactly where he was. It hasn't changed. I was in China, and I was in the original classroom for Confucius. It's like 2,000 years old. It's ridiculous. Desks are lined up in a row. Teacher stands in the front. It was just like, okay, we are definitely due for some sort of radical change. The standardization tests, they're minimum competency tests. I do find value in them. I wish that they weren't seen as such stressful. It creates such a stressful environment. But I do find value in just sort of like checking in to make sure everybody's at least to the minimum. And it's not a big concern. It's not a huge concern in Winchester, how we do on those tests, because we are very successful with them. But they're a minimum competency test. The SATs, I wish there was a better way, for our well-rounded kids, or kids that don't take a single test on one day, that's high stakes. They don't do well on a standardized test. I wish there was another system, but my advice to kids is, master the system and get in the system so you can change it. Get involved and be that change that you hope to see for other kids. And that's one of the reasons why I like being a principal. I'm able to affect change, sometimes subtly, sometimes in a larger way.
I also definitely think it's interesting how each country has its own different challenges. Like you said, the U.S. is a very big country, and because we have, a lot of immigrants from a lot of different cultures and just vast differences in how things operate on the East versus West Coast versus the South and the North, like, there's so many different things, and like you said, I think we're doing a great job with those differences, whereas in countries like Finland that are smaller and more homogenous in most senses of the word, they can try these different things and have more room, and they don't have to worry about all these other factors that we, living in the U.S. have to worry about.
Agreed.
Well, okay. What about the sort of, because I know like a teacher was telling me last year about some of the new initiatives. At least I guess we wanted to hone in on, from America at least to Massachusetts. Like the State Department had introduced a bunch of new things about like teachers having portfolios, or teachers like when they're like sort of like measuring how much they sort of taught their kids, like their impact on students. It's more so about like just growth input after I suppose like achievement level. And then so like what about some of the new initiatives that the state has been sort of putting out, and like your thoughts on that?
The state's gone back and forth on a number of initiatives, like the district determined measures, teacher portfolios. There are a lot of good ideas, because I think it's just like that whole self being in competition with yourself. How do you know you're improving unless you are actually measuring it? How do you know you're reaching kids unless you are actually measuring it? I don't think anybody should be held accountable for, like if you're giving a district determined measure and say your class is doing really well, Guru, and then the next class comes in and they don't do well. Well, that doesn't necessarily that probably doesn't mean, not even necessarily. I don't think it means, in my opinion, that you're doing worse as a teacher. That's the measures. The idea of measuring is a great idea. The methods that they've come up with aren't great, and I think people need to measure themselves. A lot of teachers know exactly how they're doing, but they're unable to prove it. If there was a way to prove it, if that was easier and non-invasive, non-judgmental for anybody but themselves and informing their own practice, then I think it would be a pretty solid system to add. I'd want to know. I mean, I surveyed the faculty. I surveyed them over the summer, and I surveyed them again after quarter one, basically saying these are the questions that I brought up over the summer, and these were informing my decision. How am I doing? And some of the feedback's great. Some of the feedback is stuff for me to work on, but it's how would I know how I was doing unless I actually asked the question? So the state hasn't made it easy, but the concepts that they're coming up with are pretty intriguing.
I think one of the good things that at least Winchester does is they don't give out class rankings. They just have decile rankings, which is, I think, really good. Just like in terms of like students measuring themselves, because I know that definitely happens. Like they'll go up to each other, even like rank each other based off like their GPA or something,
Right.
which is still bad. But like it's better than a country like India, where I'm from, where my mom and dad, they were always like number one or two like in their schools, and they knew it for a fact because like after like exam is like finished grading and everything, they would post the rankings on like a board outside of the school, and everyone would just like run up to it in crowds and just be like, oh, who got number one, who got number
Right.
like the last spot or something. So I think it's actually one of the better things that sort of, at least I don't know if other schools do the only decile rankings, but I know like good thing Winchester does, because I think it prevents some of the sort of like competition or like the unhealthy measuring that kids would do, or even like parents or teachers would do. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's because they recognize Winchester, especially, is a more at-risk community for people comparing themselves in that way, determining each other's worth based off of their grades.
Right.
But,
I think that's, you just hit on something, determining somebody's worth. It can't possibly mean you're worth any more or less if you're not ranked number 1, 2, or 100. That is an opinion that people have, and it blows my mind. Do the best you can with what you have, and compete against yourself and improve yourself every day. Don't worry about anybody else, because beating them, what is that going to give you if you're better than somebody else in your class? Well, you know what? There's about 18 million kids in the same grade as you in the United States. That's just in that country alone. So what are you really comparing yourself to? The kid that sits next to you in class? Compete against yourself. That's healthy. That'll be, if you set realistic goals and you push yourself, to achieve those goals, then you've achieved something for yourself, not against somebody else. And don't apply self-worth to what you're doing in school. That's not healthy. Apply self-worth to your own. Are you mentally happy? If you're mentally happy, then your life is full. If you want to improve it, then you're not worth less. You just have something to gain and work towards. I hope that makes sense. But I know that is a prevailing opinion of what sometimes kids feel like they're not worth something because they're not ranked something. It's unhealthy.
Do you think high school is lost then in some sort of like, at least let's, in like overachieving schools like similar to Winchester, like Winchester, Lexington, etc., high school has lost any like significance for like these students because they end up using like GPAs or like AP classes, these types of things to like metrics, as opposed to just like as to like measure themselves, as opposed to just focusing on like what they're good at?
I think what high school's worth is probably individual to each kid, each teenager. So I couldn't really answer that, but I think a lot of kids miss how fun high school can be by trying to constantly measure themselves against somebody else. When I graduated high school, my father, who loves me dearly, and I love him. We might not hug as much as we should, but we definitely love each other. He was a very straight shooter, just like sort of like I am. I said, it was at my graduation party. I said, "Are you proud of me?" He goes, "No." Well, he goes, "You're supposed to graduate high school. Was it really that hard? You got to see your friends every single day. You got some good classes that you're interested in. You got to play sports and this." I was like, all right, I guess it's only as hard as you make it, And if you're making it so hard that you're not enjoying it, then what are you doing it for? Other than a goal, which is great, but what you have to explore that goal. Is that goal worth it? It was a great conversation. One of those conversations that like burned in my brain for the rest of my life. It's like, high school's awesome. If you make it awesome, it's gonna be awesome. If you make it really hard, it's gonna be really hard. But think about why you're making it so hard. So the value. I know that some kids use Winchester High School as a stepping stone to something else, and that's fine. But you can definitely be enjoying it along the way.
I know you talked about your concerns with mental health when people start comparing themselves to other people in their class. What other things do you think the school can... I know you talked about yoga and mindfulness. What other things do you think the school could implement to help students with that?
So we started talking as a faculty at the last faculty meeting about what we can do. So we know that there's environmental factors, there's individual factors for each kid, there's community factors, there's parents and things like that. But what can we do to help? And there's a million things we can do. We have to ask, should we do them? How can we do them? So one of the main questions is, how can we help kids when they're feeling test anxiety? Can we make it clear to kids that they can ask for a an extra day, for a paper due or for a test due. If they have 3 exams in one day, can they just say, can I take this a day ahead of time? Can I take it another day? And as a faculty, a lot of people came together and said, yeah, we're totally open-minded to that. The kids need to learn how to advocate for themselves, and it's part of our curriculum. We do talk about that all the time, and I feel like Winchester kids have a pretty good grasp on advocating for themselves. They certainly did that on Twitter about the cold day last Friday. I didn't bear most of that brunt, but I heard it got pretty bad out there. So if we come together as a faculty and say, if kids can say that they have 2 exams or 3 exams in one day, can they do a makeup test on one of the other exams? Should we allow it? And most of the faculty had no problem with that, but kids just have to ask. Same thing with getting an extension on a paper. Just ask. We know you're stressed. We know you're working so hard. So just ask for help, and we'll see what we can do. So that was the step 1.
I think it's interesting, too, that you say a lot of the faculty is okay with it, because I have no doubt that they are okay with it, but I think there's a lot of students who don't even know that that's something that they can ask for, because they've just been told, oh, the paper's due on this date, like, I won't accept it after that, or it will be marked as late, and they don't realize that that's different than saying, like, can I personally have an extension?
Right. Can I, quietly go up to the person and, 2 days before it's due, not the day that it's due, and say, I'm struggling right now. Can I get an extension on this? And I'll email it to you and work out a plan. And most faculty members would say yes. I'm saying most because I don't know who would say no, but I know that in any given time, for a number of reasons, somebody might say no. So I don't want to say everybody's going to do it 100% of the time. But I know that since the conversation, it's happened a few times. And one of the things we talked about as a faculty is to say it at the beginning of the year. Say it in, your first conversation with the kids, and come out and say, you can ask for an extension. You can, if you're feeling stressed, you just need to talk to me, and we'll find something. We'll figure it out. We did have the conversation almost halfway through the year. So to be known for kids is, it's not going to get out there unless, and I know a few teachers did. A few teachers went into their classrooms and said, hey, we talked about this at the last faculty meeting. I just want to let you know that I'm open to the idea. But we are midway through the year, so the patterns are set and established in a lot of classrooms, and I wish more kids did just ask the question. I mean, the worst thing you could be told is no, right? And then you're still exactly where you were before the question. You're not any worse.
That's true. I think a lot of kids, maybe they're just, I guess that's what you're saying. They're either uninformed or just sort of like, I guess maybe like afraid to just go up to a teacher.
Probably a little bit of both, probably.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been informed because we hadn't talked about it before.
Yeah. And do you think maybe like teachers or like the school could do anything to maybe like sort of lessen the talk or just sort of notion of like college for like underclassmen, even though like it's almost inevitable, like it's really impossible to avoid, but it's like, at least for me, it's like so strange hearing sort of freshmen talking about these sort of topics, or like
visiting colleges.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if you look at our curriculum, if you look at guidance and what they do, guidance doesn't start talking about college until junior year. I mean, they might mention it in a meeting, one-on-one meeting, or where do you think but they're not pushing anything. I've talked to a bunch of parents, and then they say, why don't you do more your freshman year about the college process? And we say, we don't want you worried about those things. We want you to finish your sophomore year healthy and happy, and then start to think about that stuff, because you still have plenty of time. We can't stop what people do in their own homes, but as a school, we don't really start talking about college in the guidance curriculum until you're a junior, specifically for that. Let's diminish the talk now, and let's have kids transition from 8th grade to 9th grade and enjoy Winchester High School, not feel the pressure of I gotta do so well right now. Like, of course you have to do well. We want you to do well, but we don't want you to feel the pressure of doing well.
But then what would you say to, like, I mean, not that like you like telling like parents should do this, but like would you recommend for like for students, like younger students, or like just families of younger students, to sort of maybe think about like when they're younger, and like instead of thinking about college, like what should they be really focusing on in like earlier?
Enjoying what they're doing now, enjoying and doing it successfully. Focus on today, and if you're doing the best you can today, then everything will take care of itself down the road. I have had that conversation, but parents are entitled to do anything they want, and I support them. If that's a conversation they're having as families with 8th graders and freshmen, then that's fine. And, that's just that's their choice. It's not something that we're doing, but I'm not going to dissuade anybody from doing it other than say, enjoy the time you have now because it's a unique time in your lives.
Yeah, I was going to say it goes back to what you said. High school is what you make of it. People talk about not knowing what they want to go into, but if you spend your high school years just exploring as opposed to just trying to get the best grades so that you can get into a good college and then find out what you want to do, it can be spent doing things you enjoy because, like you said, you get to go to a building and see your friends for the whole day. And I was going to say, you don't have to bring work home, but you do.
Yes, you
day.
do. Yeah. I'm aware of the workload as well, and that's, maybe changing the schedule down the road, we'll be able to work with that a little bit as well. But that's a big idea.
Do you think like a later start time would change anything, or?
So it's funny. I went to 2 weeks ago. I went to a seminar with Dr. Evans about later start times for high school, and about an 8:15, maybe 8:30 start for the high school. And all the research, the American Academy of Pediatrics, all the public health organizations, they all promote and they all agree with later start times. And so the prevailing answer, that the people that are against it will say, well, Winchester kids will just stay up later. That might actually happen, but all the data from the research of schools that have gone to later start times shows that the kids actually don't stay up any later than they were typically staying, but they're still getting better sleep. So it got down to the science, which I loved. I got to geek out about circadian rhythms and how your body, you go into REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, at a certain hour in the night. And it doesn't matter how much sleep you've gotten, whether you're gone to bed at 8 o'clock or 11:30. At around 3 to 4 a.m., that's when you're getting your best sleep, because that's how we, for 99% of the population, have evolved as a species. It's dark, and you're wherever you are sleeping. That's when your body, for its own biological rhythms and biological needs, that's when you usually get your best possible sleep. So for us to be pulling you out of it at 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning to start to come to school, it's just shy of when you should be being pulled out of it. If we can get you to be pulled out of that sleep at 7 in the morning, it makes a vast difference scientifically in your biological rhythms. And again, with those circadian rhythms and how just your hormones are being secreted at that 3 to 4 a.m. window. We're not doing you a huge disservice by having you get up when you get up, but we're not helping either. If we can extend it, we will be helping. So it's an interesting question. There's a lot of good data, and just like with any data or statistics, I'm sure there's counterpoints as well. But the seminar we went to was promoting the idea of later start times. But it's one of those big issues because, again, all I care about is Winchester High School. But if we start messing around with the times at the high school, then we're going to be messing around with the times at the K through 5s and as well as the middle school. How does that affect families? How does it affect daycare? How does it affect travel for parents that are working? It's a big issue. It's just like a snow day. Everyone wants that 2-hour delay. I love 2-hour delays, and at high school it doesn't affect us at all, right? You're just going to come out to school 2 hours later. But what about that kid whose parents are both working and they have to get to work? What are they going to do with the student that's hanging around in the house for 2 hours, and mom and dad have to get into the office to do whatever they need to do, and they have appointments? It's not as easy to cancel school or to have a 2-hour delay as you'd imagine. Same thing with starting school times later. It's a lot of conversations and people in the community have to be involved. Teachers is almost more importantly than anybody, because they have patterned their lives for this very specific start time that they're used to for years and years and years. Well, if we change that, how's that going to affect their lives and their commute and their own childcare issues? So we have to really respect the people that work in our building as well.
And I guess my final point would be I know a few weeks ago we had an assembly, I guess specifically for freshmen, but it also at night the gift of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought what was so interesting is a lot of high schoolers don't know how to sort of cope with failure, accept sort of the benefits of it. And then for you, do you think it's difficult for high school to really understand, because at least in Winchester a lot of them are maybe more focused on, especially juniors, seniors, they're more focused on getting their grades in and getting into college. And so what my first question would be what is your opinion the gift of failure to you?
Sure.
And then for high schoolers, do you think what benefit should they be seeing?
I don't think it's a Winchester issue. I mean, just as human beings, nobody likes to fail.
Yeah.
It's hard to accept it. It's hard to be okay with it. It's a, you know, even when you do fail, sometimes you find reasons to be like, well, there's a silver lining to it. And if we can make that a little bit bigger, that silver lining a little bit bigger, then I think people would be a little bit more accepting of failure. But it's, it's hypocritical of me to say like, oh, failure's okay. I get it. I get the conversation. You just can't beat yourself up over it. I guess if I were to surmise it, I'd just say like, you're gonna fail. It's gonna happen. Learn from it. Move forward. It's a simple mindset. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, learn from it. What could I have done better? Okay, put it in the rearview mirror and don't worry about it. Move forward and just do better next time. And don't be crushed by it, because there's going to be other times that you're going to fail. And it's not a Winchester problem. It's just human beings, we're not wired to want to fail. We're wired to survive and thrive in harsh climates and harsh worlds and do amazing things. It's really what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. So that we don't not only we don't accept failure, we try to find ways to get around it and through it faster. It's a pretty interesting concept.
I definitely agree that failure is a issue that a lot of high schoolers in general do have to deal with, and I think some of them don't really have to deal with quote unquote big failures until senior year, because for a lot of kids, you go through school and if you try your hardest and work really hard, like most of the time you can like see your results. But for a lot of kids, they can, work really, really hard, do everything right, and apply to a college and not get in for something that they haven't even done. And for a lot of kids, that's a shock to them. It's like, how could I fail even though I did everything right, so to speak?
Right. It's the college acceptance process it's amazing. There's so many kids I know, like, they've done everything right. They've done what they're supposed to do, but there might have been 50 other kids doing the exact same stuff, and who wrote about it slightly different. There's a huge human component to the college acceptance process, and we don't get to see that side. But what's the worst case is you didn't get into your first school. You're still going to end up going to a great school, and it's what you make of it. You don't beat yourself up over it. Be unhappy for a day. Okay. You didn't realize that goal, but what's the silver lining? You're going to go to another amazing school, maybe a school that you don't really want to go to because you had your heart set on something, but it's your job to make it amazing, and it's your job to say, okay, I didn't realize that goal. That stinks. I'd use more descriptive language, but it is what it is, right? So pick yourself up, say, this is my next goal. I'm gonna set a new goal, and I'm gonna make this place the best place it can possibly be.
I also, I know you mentioned this early on in this. I think it's important for some kids to realize that college isn't for everyone.
Sure.
Because especially, just in society in general, there is becoming more and more of a push for everyone to go to college, and that's great for a lot of people, and it's great that a lot of people get the opportunity to go to college, but there are kids who they are fine and want to do jobs that don't involve going to college, but they feel, like you said, like they just got to do what is set out for them, what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
What about you, Guru? What's your opinion on doing what you're supposed to do?
I think people should do. I agree with Mr. Mahoney. Like, people should be doing what they're passionate about, and I think it's kind of. I never agree with the thing when someone's like, "I'm passionate about this thing, but it's not like the best career option." You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I understand it from like a logistics point of view. Like, oh, I want to make money. I want to like be that sort of successful person. But like, it's like, do you want to just like be making money your whole life, or do you want to be doing what you love your whole life? And then in some cases, it might be the same. They'll coincide. You know what I mean? And then, but I don't think. There's no such thing as like you're doing what you're supposed to do. Like, you have to make your own expectations. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and I think in America especially. I mean, this is true for a lot of countries, not just America, but like the whole Americans live to work versus everybody else living not work to live.
I mean, I think America. There's a lot of a diverse amount of career opportunities in this country, as opposed to something like, it's like when my parents, when they were growing up, there were only like two career options. It's either be a doctor or be an engineer. And both my parents became computer engineers. But that was it if you wanted to sort of just like be successful in your life. And it's like, I'm glad that in this country, and like especially in this day and age, there are so many more job opportunities and like a diverse number of jobs. And then like even if you didn't want to go to college, you still be able to like find something you love to do. And if you did go to college, like a lot of colleges offer so many different majors now that like you'll be able to find something specifically for you. So
And part of that graduation speech is half written. It's about go out and explore, go try something. It sounds cliche, but there are jobs out there that have not been invented yet. I mean, we're preparing you guys to be successful in college, but I don't know if college is going to be preparing you guys to be successful in the world. You know, it's if you're still taking the same coursework that you took when I was in college. You look at all the jobs that are out there. There's jobs that are just being invented now. I mean, you look at people that work for Twitter that what did they go to school to study? They didn't go to school to study like 140 characters and getting your point across. It's amazing. It can be overwhelming, but it goes back to what are you passionate about? I mean, making a lot of money would be darn nice. I wish I could double my salary, but that's not going to happen. And so I don't care about it that much because I'm doing what I love to do.
Yeah. Something.
No, I had something and I forgot what it was.
Oh, well. But did you have anything else to add, Mr. Mahoney?
I thought we were going to talk about Rogue One. I mean, we could talk about that if you want.
Sure, just give your quick thoughts, I guess.
I'd say 2 thumbs way up. I think it's not appropriate for younger viewers, but I am going to take my sons to see it on Christmas night. I saw it already. The Darth Vader scenes were amazing, and the locales were fantastic. I agree with Guru that maybe it was too fast-paced, which is counter to most Star Wars movies, but I thought it was fantastic.
Great. Derek, have you seen it yet?
Nope, I don't watch Star Wars things. I'm a heathen, I know.
That's okay. You'll come around soon.
But thank you so much for coming to the show, Mr. Mahoney. It's been a really great episode. It did go over an hour, by the way.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So guys, you can find all our other episodes on YouTube. You can just subscribe to us there. And thank you so much for listening to us this week. Derek, Mr. Mahoney, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Derek, you were such a great host.
I barely said anything.
Yeah, still a great question. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks.